Hi everyone, number one Marmaduke fan here. I think I'm going to publish this on my main channel because I have so much respect for Carl Barks. I think I'm going to bring back a few iPhone comic book review videos to my main channel, number one Marmaduke fan. So I'm looking at Donald Duck, the Ghost Sheriff of Last Gasp by Carl Barks. This is a collection of numerous stories by Carl Barks, published by Fantagraphics, and this is volume 15 of their series. The numbers indicate chronological order, but they're not publishing them in chronological order. So they're kind of like, jumping back and forward in time a little bit to publish probably the most popular and famous stories first. But when it's all out, one through whatever it's going to be, you'll be able to like kind of see the history of Carl Barks, Donald Duck, and Uncle Scrooge comics all on one shelf. So I think I'm going to do a little series where I just talk very briefly about each story. They're very simple stories. They're very pure and solid stories. So I won't be doing like a play-by-play of every little thing that happens. But what I do want to do is do a little research behind the scenes and kind of explain to you what these are and where these come from. So they put most of like the technical information at the back about how these were published, the style of publishing back then. These were originally published by Dell Comics, some of these, and they've actually photoshopped the Dell logo out. Dell no longer exists, and you can read tons of Dell comics for free, and I think it's legal online because Dell went out of business and they didn't protect their copyrights after that. But this one was originally published as, where are you? There we go. Walt Disney Comics and Stories, number 176. The titles are unofficial. The Ghost Sheriff of Last Gasp, that doesn't show up anywhere in the book. Those are things that fans might have come up with, or maybe Carl Barks may have referred to some of these stories that way. The publication date, May 1955, that's misleading. That actually means it was published before May 1955, maybe 1 or 2 months before that. I also looked it up, and I found the original comic book, and it was also volume 15, number 8 back then. So I don't know. I don't know. It's just so interesting seeing like all the different conventions for. Oh no, I lost it. All the different conventions for this. So this is the cover for that issue, drawn by Carl Barks. And since they kind of break it up, it's not like reading the actual old original comic book. They're just pulling out the stories and collecting those together. So Carl Barks cover I read the whole issue and the other stories in this one, and this doesn't have any this cover doesn't have anything to do with any of the stories in it. So Donald's reading his newspaper and looking down, and Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and noticeably yellow instead of blue. They have their report cards, and they're all C's, and they've got pillows on their backsides, and they're kind of like nervously holding on to like a belt and a strap because they're worried about getting the licking. So I think the covers were meant to just have like a funny little slice of life moment to say, "Hey kids, Donald Duck stories," and none of the stories in this actual issue had anything to do with this. There, in the original issue, there was like a Big Bad Wolf story. There was a Mickey Mouse and his 2 nephews stories. There were like some 1-page gags and some 4-panel comics. It was really just like a big, like 50 pages of fun Disney-related character stuff. And quite possibly Carl Barks drew some of those other stories. I thought they were all well drawn. The point I'm trying to make is, if you have even a passing interest in Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, this is like a big part of comics history, and there's just so much of it. So you look at this book and wow, like 15 volumes of comics by Carl Barks just about Donald Duck, and then you realize that's just the tip of the iceberg for all of these other characters, and it's such a big, beautiful part of comic book history. I wanted to call attention to this. So Stefano Priorone is an Italian journalist who has contributed to the Italian editions of these books, and he notes that the year this came out, Gunsmoke, which was a radio show, became a TV show, and it was the longest running primetime live action drama. And that's important because that was probably a impetus, something that helped inspire Carl Barks to write the Ghost Sheriff of Last Gasp. Like I said, I think you should just read these stories, so I'm not going to do like the play-by-play of every little thing that happens. I'm going to comment on the moments from it I think are most illustrative of why I think Carl Barks is a genius, and why I really think you should be reading great old Disney comics and what you can learn from them. So, number 1, you should read Carl Barks comics because he does a lot with a little. all of his comics is just kind of like panel, 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 panel. He's not doing like, weird upside down, inside out panel compositions like you see from the manga industry, or you see just, it's kind of become standard for even Western comics as well, that they use panel layouts experimentally and fluidly, which is good. But what Carl Barks proves is how much you can do with simplicity. So yeah, the panel layout is simple. Panel, 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 panel. But then look at how much he does detail wise. Like he captures like, the rugged, bent in look of the old Western town. He gets all the crags and cracks in it. So he's creating a visual, powerful, detailed world for the Disney characters to live in. And because of that, this adds a depth to the Disney characters that I love the animated cartoons, but none of the animated cartoons could have a style of story like they had in the comic stories for these characters. It's a very rich, adventurous kind of world they created that just so happens to be populated by the Disney cartoon duck characters. The other thing I wanted to call attention to is the heroism in this story. I think, so I already talked about Carl Barks' art style. So the heroism in this story comes from, it's a combination of the comedic and the parody of the Old West, but then a genuine interest in the Old West. So the town is haunted by Wild Bill Trueshot, who's got the hiccups, and he's afraid that people will nickname him Wild Bill Hiccup, like Wild Bill Hickok. And for some reason, he fell down a well and he became immortal, and they never explain why that is. Okay, I just roll with it. So he's become an immortal, and he's still haunting this town. Because Donald and the boys get separated, Donald runs to a gun store and asks for some 45s, and they won't sell them to him because, spoiler alert, there actually have been regulations on selling guns for a long time in the United States. So irony of ironies, the only thing that Donald Duck can get are these toy guns from the TV show Trigger Strongheart, which is probably Carl Barks' way of making fun of Gunsmoke. Is Trigger Strongheart is a super strong TV cowboy who's like all dashing and heroic and has flashy guns. Donald Duck hates that. He wanted to show the boys the Old West. So the irony is that Donald, who hated the modern TV cowboy, has to use like the modern TV cowboy's products to save his nephews. Now, the reason I say this is heroic is that both Donald and the old-timey sheriff have this heroic element to them, where Donald's willing to die and walk into a gunfight with toy guns that won't do anything, just to maybe like make enough time for the police to get there and save his nephews. So Donald's being heroic. Wild Bill Trueshot is being heroic because as a sheriff, he takes his position seriously, which means he's willing to go out there and face someone who's coming, even if it means he gets shot. And his guns have rusted. So, but the joke is both of them are going into a gunfight. Neither of them has working guns, and yet both of them are heroic and willing to die for their principles. And Donald to save his nephews. And then the punchline is, of course, that Donald Duck scares Wild Bill so much that he scares the hiccups out of him. And I love how in these stories, Donald is it's like Darkwing Duck. Darkwing Duck is a character who is a genuine heroic person, but he's also a goofball who has comedic things happen to him, but he's not just a joke. The fact that they use comedy for the character doesn't detract from the really genuine heroic aspect of the character. So the silly aspect of Donald Duck, can't even get his toy guns out of their holsters, doesn't detract from the fact that he was heroic enough that he was willing to die for his boys. It just helps set him up for these comedic moments when he gets embarrassed or he realizes that the Old West wasn't quite what he imagined it to be. So a fabulous story, richly illustrated and detailed. I think I might do a series where I talk about these stories and just try to do a little research behind the scenes on like what was going on back then, whatever I can find. Like I said, they're simple, they're straightforward. I mean, there's kind of no point in doing like a complete play-by-play of all of them, but I do think in any of them you can find moments where Carl Barks is using really, fluid, expressive line work, really rich, detailed backgrounds to create these worlds. And then you realize he's just one of a number of artists making hundreds and hundreds of these stories. It's a really fascinating part of comic history that even these great collected editions, they're only scratching the surface of. So the book is Fantagraphics, Donald Duck, the Ghost Sheriff of Last Gasp. It's volume 15 in their series. You can even get like the original old issue of this, not too much on used. So take a peek at some Donald Duck comics. I think if your only impression of him is like the animated shorts, there's a lot of variety to this character, and I'm so happy that the new DuckTales is out. But what I appreciate about the new DuckTales is how it's sort of a homage to this great history of great stories for these characters. Genuinely good, fun stories. Oh, I want to show this off too, since this is the first one. Praise for Carl Barks. I consider Carl Barks comics to be the best form of storytelling I've read. Jeff Kinney, author, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Like, the number of people who read these books in the 50s and then went on to make their own thing is incredible. So even if you haven't sat down and read Carl Barks' Duck comic books, you have watched movies. Did you watch Star Wars? You have watched movies by people who were influenced by this generation and this era of storytelling. And I really think you should take a chance to expose yourself to it. If you think you're not interested in Donald Duck comics, just give it a shot. Give Carl Barks a shot, and I think you will start getting immersed by his professionalism and his fluidity. With that, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. I love the people who have supported this channel. I have a Subscribestar, and if you subscribe to me on Subscribestar, I will feature your name in the thank you credits for every single video. I'm making plans for a video that I will publish at the end of the year. I'm going to call it like the end of the year thank you celebration, where I'll thank all the people who have supported this channel. So check out my Subscribestar. If you decide to register for Subscribestar, please use my referral link, and Subscribestar will support this channel. And if you decide to support this channel, you get an eternal thank you. I will never stop saying thank you to the people who have supported this channel. With that, I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. I love you guys, and I'll catch you later.